My name is Emily. While I was hospitalized and barely able to sign my own name, my sister took legal control of my life and started selling what I owned. By the time I stood up again, everything was already in motion. If you've lived through something similar, tell me about it in the comments. When I was hospitalized for weeks, my sister asked me to sign a power of attorney so she could take care of everything. The week before that, life looked ordinary. Work days blurred together at my desk in Austin, juggling sprint deadlines and vendor calls, sneaking coffee between meetings. Even from the hospital bed, I kept dialing into stand-ups, apologizing for the IV pole drifting into view. Nobody questioned it. I was reliable. That was my thing. Then, my body quit cooperating. 1 minute, I was answering Slack messages. The next, a nurse was calling my name while someone tightened a blood pressure cuff. Tests followed. More tests. Doctors used careful phrases and asked me the same questions twice. At some point, my phone stopped buzzing and a bracelet went around my wrist. Sarah showed up the second morning with a tote bag and a smile that felt rehearsed. She kissed my cheek, set the bag down, and pulled out a thin folder. "The hospital needs this today," she said. "It's just temporary, so I can handle things." The papers were clipped neatly, tabs already marked. Power of attorney. I squinted at the header and asked what "handle things" meant. "Bills, work stuff, your house, nothing big," she said, already flipping pages. "You don't need to read all that." My hand shook when I reached for the pen. She steadied the clipboard with practiced patience. "Sign here and here," Sarah said. "We'll notarize it at Lone Star Legal Notary on South Lamar. They're fast." A nurse stepped in, paused, and looked from the folder to my wristband. Her eyebrows lifted for half a second. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Family paperwork," Sarah replied, smiling wider. "We're good." The nurse nodded, though not convincingly, and adjusted my IV before leaving. Sarah slid the page closer. The date was printed at the bottom. I noticed it only because she tapped near it, urging the pen forward. I signed. She collected the pages immediately, stacking them with care. "I'll keep the copies," she said. "Less for you to worry about." A stretcher arrived sooner than expected. Someone announced another scan. As they unlocked the bed, Sarah squeezed my shoulder. "Good thing you trust me," she said. No response came. The ceiling lights started moving instead. The elevator doors closed as my bed rolled in. Sarah stayed behind, folder tucked under her arm. While the numbers ticked downward, her phone rang. She answered without hesitation. "Yes," she said. "That works. We can move fast." The doors opened. The bed rolled forward. The call continued somewhere behind me. The hallway smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. Someone steered the bed left, then right. Over the intercom, my last name echoed, slightly mispronounced. The phone call behind me dropped to a whisper. Papers rustled. A door opened. The wheels locked. I stared at the ceiling tiles, counting cracks, while voices kept deciding things. No one asked me anything as the screen slid into place above my head again. Chapter 2. Everyone thought she was helping. The discharge papers came with a warning to avoid stress. I folded them into my bag anyway and went straight back to work the next morning. Slack messages piled up. Meetings resumed. What didn't resume was access to my own money. The first sign was a declined grocery purchase. The second was an email from the bank about unusual activity, already marked resolved. At lunch, I logged in and stared at the balance. A 5-figure withdrawal sat there with yesterday's date. Sarah answered on the second ring. "It's fine," she said. "I moved some things around while you were out. You needed help." At home that night, family texts rolled in. Sarah really stepped up. "You're lucky to have her. She handled everything so you could heal." Work noticed, too. My manager pulled me aside after stand-up. "You've been distracted," he said. "Take a few days. Get the family stuff sorted." That phrase followed me everywhere. Family stuff. As if it were a single item on a checklist. When I asked Sarah for specifics, answers slid sideways. Which account was that money from? "Don't stress about numbers," she said. "Your house paperwork is cleaner now." Cleaner how? I did what had to be done. Neighbors waved with sympathy. One of my doctors emailed to check in and thanked Sarah for coordinating care. The story had already settled into something neat and generous. Nobody questioned it. I met Maya Lopez at a coffee shop near her office. She didn't hug me or tell me everything would be okay. She waited until the drinks arrived. "What did you sign?" she asked. "A power of attorney." "For what?" "For everything." She nodded once. "Don't argue feelings," Maya said. "Collect facts." That afternoon, a bank branch visit replaced work. The teller scrolled through her screen longer than usual. "Your sister is very proactive," she said. The pause landed heavier than the word. Statements printed, dates circled, notes taken without commentary. When I asked about transaction limits, the answer was rehearsed. With a valid power of attorney, she can act on your behalf. A call to Lone Star Legal Notary came next. The receptionist pulled the file. Yes, there were multiple documents, she said, all signed under the same authorization. Multiple? Property-related, financial, more than errands. The words sat there without explanation. No accusations, no sympathy, just confirmation. Dinner with Sarah turned into a monologue. She talked about contractors, timelines, how exhausting it had been to hold things together. Every attempt to ask about specifics redirected into gratitude. "You were sick," she said. "I protected you." My phone buzzed while she spoke. An email notification pushed through. Subject line in plain text. Notice of intent to sell. The house. My house. The message listed a buyer, a closing window, and a deadline for final signatures. A few days. No request, no question. Sarah watched me read it. "It's already in motion," she said. "This is what's best." The email stayed open as the conversation continued around it. Questions formed, stalled, and dissolved. The room felt crowded with decisions already made. Fingers hovered over the screen, scrolling back to the date and time, reading it again, while Sarah reached for her keys, still talking about how relieved everyone would be once it was done. Chapter 3. How She Did It. Emails stacked faster than I could open them. Bank statements, escrow notices, automated updates from websites I had never logged into before. Tabs filled the browser until the computer slowed, forcing decisions, one click at a time. Screenshots replaced answers. Dates mattered now. The power of attorney sat buried in an attachment Sarah had emailed weeks earlier, printed, highlighted, read line by line. It was broader than described: authority over property, accounts, signatures. The notarized stamp carried the same date as the hospital chart, noting temporary incapacity. No margin, no coincidence. That explained the rush. Not the hospital, not the nurses. A closing schedule had been waiting. The clipboard, the pen. Lone Star Legal Notary wasn't a convenience. It was a deadline. Calls started before noon. Sarah left 3 voicemails. "You're creating chaos. You're undoing work. Mom is upset." My phone kept lighting up with family numbers. Messages followed, repeating phrases Sarah favored. Worry, stress, ingratitude. When answered, conversations turned circular. "I'm asking for records," I said. "You're accusing me," she replied. "I'm asking for timelines. You're hurting everyone." By mid-afternoon, a decision replaced discussion. The real estate office was downtown. Traffic crawled. Parking cost $12. Inside, a receptionist smiled, then stiffened at the name. "I need the transaction paused," I said. "I'm the owner." The agent joined us with a folder already labeled. He flipped pages while listening. "With a valid authorization," he said, "your sister initiated the sale." "Pause it," I repeated. He stepped away to make a call. The wait lasted minutes. My phone rang. "You went behind my back," Sarah said. "You're sabotaging this." Her tone stayed level, controlled. "I saved you from dealing with paperwork," she added. That landed while standing between stacked contracts and disclosure forms taller than my forearm. The agent returned, eyes avoiding mine. "She wants this to move forward," he said. "Legally, we can't stop without a court order." Outside, another notification arrived. Funds transferred. The amount matched the preliminary settlement statement. Seconds later, access vanished. Error messages replaced balances. Customer service routed calls into loops. Sarah texted, "I consolidated everything. It's safer this way." A new email followed from the bank about restricted access pending review. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Voicemail. "This is standard procedure," the message said. Mom called that evening, voice tight. She repeated what Sarah had told her, word for word. I listened, asked for specifics, and got silence. The call ended with advice to rest and stop fighting. "You should be grateful," she said. "She's doing her best." Back at the computer, transaction histories stretched across months. Listing agreements dated earlier than the hospital stay. Emails scheduling inspections before my admission. Each file pushed the signing day into focus without commentary. The pattern was clear enough to act, not enough to prove. That gap mattered. It didn't stop the phone from ringing. "Pick up," Sarah said. "We need to talk." I walked into the bank branch again and asked about the restriction. A supervisor explained policy without lifting her eyes, sliding a brochure forward like an apology. "Your access is limited while we review," she said. "By whom?" "By the account holder." That wording lingered. Forms waited to be signed somewhere else. Phones kept ringing. The day narrowed into steps and counters. Another email arrived from the realtor with attachments already labeled final. A request for acknowledgement sat highlighted. The clock in the corner of the screen crept forward. "Please confirm receipt," it read. I typed a response, deleted it, and saved the drafts folder instead. "Evidence first," Maya had said. The phrase held. Sarah called again before sunset. The same calm pressure, the same warnings about consequences I was apparently creating. "You don't understand the risk," she said. "I understand the timing." The street outside the bank shimmered with heat. Notifications stacked. Each one nudged the situation forward without waiting. Across the street, a bench offered shade. I didn't sit. The phone vibrated again, cutting off the thought. Before anything could slow down for me today. Chapter 4. No longer just family business. Rent was due Friday. The online portal loaded, spun, then rejected the payment without explanation. A call to the property office confirmed what the error message wouldn't say. Your account shows insufficient funds. The word insufficient followed me through the afternoon. Another call, this time to the bank, produced a scripted answer and a reference number. Access remained restricted. No exceptions. An envelope waited on the kitchen counter when I got home. Overnight delivery. A law firm letterhead. Sarah's name appeared in bold, halfway down the page. The letter accused me of interfering with lawful transactions and demanded I cease contact with third parties immediately. I called her. "You hired a lawyer? You left me no choice. You sold my house. I managed it." Mom called next. Her voice stayed steady, like she was reading notes. "You should be grateful," she said. "Sarah took responsibility when you couldn't. I didn't ask for this. You signed." That answer ended the conversation. Texts followed from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Advice came packaged as concern. Stop escalating. Trust family. Let professionals handle it. Work noticed the missed rent notice before I did. HR asked if everything was okay. I said yes. The word traveled better than the truth. Maya met me outside my building. She didn't try to fix anything. She looked at the letter, then the notices, then the dates. "This wasn't improvised," she said. She prepared. The preparation explained the timing, the confidence, the way everyone else fell into place around her version of events. It didn't change the pressure. The bank left another voicemail. The realtor emailed again. Sarah's attorney sent a follow-up with attachments. Another message arrived from the landlord asking for confirmation by end of day. A late fee warning followed, polite but firm. I replied asking for a grace period and attached the discharge note. No response came back. The bank escalated the review. A supervisor explained policy again and emailed forms that required signatures I could not provide. Each form referenced the authorization already on file. Sarah's attorney scheduled a call. The invitation listed a time, not a question. When it started, he spoke carefully about exposure and costs. Continuing interference could complicate matters, he said. I'm asking for my records, I replied. That may be interpreted differently. Mom called during the call and left 3 messages. The last one asked why I was doing this to the family. A cousin texted a link about forgiveness. At work, an automated reminder flagged the unpaid rent address tied to my payroll file. HR asked whether my address had changed. I said no and forwarded nothing. Paper piled on the table. Envelopes overlapped. Tabs multiplied. Each document pointed back to the same signature and the same hour. The pattern didn't accuse anyone. It simply existed. Deadlines stacked without coordination, and every notice assumed consent already given, leaving no room for questions, pauses, explanations, or the person whose name appeared everywhere except the conversation itself then. I requested my medical records and picked them up in person. The clerk slid the packet across the counter and asked for a signature. Dates lined the pages, notes stacked. One entry stopped me. Temporary incapacity, time-stamped, same day, same hour. The power of attorney copy sat folded in my bag. The notarized date matched the chart exactly. No gray area, no accident. Phones kept ringing. Sarah's attorney called to remind me of potential consequences. The bank requested additional verification. Mom texted a heart emoji and the word please. Everything arrived at once and demanded compliance. None of it offered options. Maya stayed on the sidewalk while I stood there with the records. She pointed to the pattern without raising her voice. She moved first, she said. She set the board. The civil law office was 2 blocks away. The sign listed names and specialties in plain lettering. I crossed the street, folder pressed to my side, ignoring another call. The door opened as someone else stepped out, phone already to their ear. The handle felt cool. The packet slipped against my arm. The phone vibrated again as I reached forward and pushed. Chapter 5. What I Missed. The apartment looked borrowed, furniture gone, shelves bare, even the spare change jar missing from the counter. What remained fit into 2 grocery bags and a backpack. Rent was past due. Utilities followed. Without access to the main account, survival turned transactional. A short call to Maya covered groceries. Another friend floated gas money without asking why. Pride stayed out of the way because it had nothing useful to offer. Paperwork took over the table. Medical records, bank notices, copies of the power of attorney, every email printed and stacked. This time, nothing moved fast. Each page got read. Every signature matched. Dates lined up too well. The mistake wasn't complicated. It was small and ordinary. The signing happened because exhaustion met trust. The assumption was simple. A sister wouldn't cross that line. Reading closely felt unnecessary. Asking questions felt rude. Rest felt more urgent than control. That combination did the damage. One question kept circling, refusing to resolve itself. At what point did I stop being the owner of my own life? The answer didn't arrive all at once. It showed up in pieces. When the pen touched paper. When the folder stayed with Sarah. When deadlines appeared without consent. Ownership didn't disappear suddenly. It thinned until it was gone. Family calls slowed, then stopped. Advice dried up. The tone shifted from concern to distance. Silence filled the gaps where support was supposed to be. The isolation didn't hurt as much as the clarity it brought. No one was coming to negotiate on my behalf. Maya stopped by after work. She didn't comment on the empty space or the stacks of paper. You can prove incapacity, she said, tapping the medical records. The timing matters. She pulled up a name on her phone and slid it across the table. A civil attorney in Austin who specialized in abuse of authority. No promises attached, just a path. "If you do this," Maya said, "you won't get the family back." That wasn't framed as a warning, just a fact. The cost sat there plainly. Proceeding meant burning the bridge completely. Silence from relatives would become permanent. Holidays would get rearranged. The version of family that existed before would end, officially. What stayed was the evidence. The goal shifted without drama. This wasn't about convincing anyone. No arguments left to win. The focus narrowed to process. Records, timelines, legal definitions, putting proof where it belonged. The law office smelled faintly of paper and cleaner. The attorney read without interruption. Pages turned slowly. Questions came only after the last document was set down. "Date and time of signing?" I answered. "Diagnosis?" I pointed. He nodded once. "This is actionable," he said, "but it won't be quick." The retainer agreement slid across the desk. Numbers followed. They were higher than comfortable and lower than losing everything. The pen hovered for a second, then moved. The folder went back across the desk with the medical chart on top. The power of attorney stayed visible, unfolded. "That hour matters," I said. "That's when it happened." The attorney marked the page and reached for the phone. A calendar notification chimed somewhere in the office. Another client waited. The process had started, whether anyone approved or not. Chapter 6. It was never just about helping. The first confirmation came from a spreadsheet, not a confession. My attorney forwarded a file flagged during discovery. It listed loan payments, due dates, penalty clauses. Sarah's name appeared repeatedly, tied to an investment LLC I had never heard of. The numbers told a simple story. Payments were overdue. Penalties were stacking. One deadline sat highlighted in red. It matched the week I signed the power of attorney. Another document followed. Email chains between Sarah and a private lender, time-stamped months before my hospitalization. Subject lines referenced collateral, bridge funding, temporary liquidity. My name wasn't on them, but my assets were. Houses, accounts, things that existed long before I got sick. The urgency at the hospital wasn't about my care. It was about her clock. The broader authority and the power of attorney made sense now, too. It wasn't convenience. It was speed. Selling property without consultation. Moving funds without notice. No delays. No follow-up calls. Everything designed to move fast enough to meet obligations that had nothing to do with me. My attorney laid the papers out across the table. She needed unrestricted control, he said, and she needed it immediately. Sarah's response arrived the same afternoon. Her lawyer filed a counterclaim asserting that all actions were lawful, that I was attempting to retroactively challenge decisions made in good faith. The language was clinical. It framed the situation as a disagreement, not an abuse. A witness withdrew the next day. The notary, who had paused in the hospital hallway, now stated she had no concerns at the time. An email thread that referenced timing issues was suddenly deemed inadmissible due to authentication problems. Each update stripped away something I thought would hold. The court didn't rule quickly. Assets stayed frozen. Bills stayed unpaid. The house remained tied up in legal limbo. The leverage I thought I had narrowed to a file folder and a calendar. Sarah didn't call anymore. Communication went through attorneys. Her filings painted a picture of diligence and sacrifice. The narrative was tidy. I had been ill. She had stepped in. Now I was confused, possibly influenced, definitely disruptive. Family silence hardened. No more texts, no more advice. Mom sent a single message asking whether this could all be dropped. It went unanswered. The attorney meetings became procedural. He explained timelines without embellishment. Emergency hearings were possible. Outcomes weren't guaranteed. Sarah's position was strong, at least on paper. She prepared, he said again. That matters. Preparation showed up everywhere, in the way documents were labeled, in the order transactions were executed, and how quickly her side adapted when something failed. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision born of stress. It was a plan waiting for an opening. The losses registered one by one. A credit card closed, another loan application denied, a temporary extension on rent expired. None of it came with drama, just notifications. I kept showing up to work, kept conversations short, kept answers neutral. No explanations offered, no sympathy requested. The story outside the filings didn't matter anymore. The case shifted into a holding pattern. Motions filed, responses scheduled, deadlines posted weeks out. Nothing moved in my favor immediately. The pressure didn't lift. It redistributed. Near the end of the week, my attorney called with an update. There will be an expedited review, he said. The judge agreed to hear the incapacity argument. It wasn't a win, just an opening. Sarah's filings still framed the narrative. Her side had more resources, more documentation, more time invested before I ever realized what was happening. They're ahead, he added, for now. The phone call ended. The table stayed covered in documents. Outside, traffic moved as usual. Deadlines waited. Another email from the bank arrived, acknowledging the ongoing review without changing access. The emergency hearing was scheduled for the following week. The notice listed a date and time. No commentary, no reassurance. I closed the laptop, stacked the files, and placed the medical record on top again. The timestamp stayed visible. The same hour, the same minute. That was all that moved with me as I stood up, picked up my keys, and stepped back into the work of waiting. Chapter 7. Putting it on the record. The courtroom ran on a schedule that didn't care about family history. Names were called, folders shuffled, people stood when told. My attorney nodded once and stepped forward. Sarah sat 2 rows back with her lawyer, posture composed, hands folded like this was a meeting she had planned for. The strategy stayed simple. No stories, no explanations, just sequence. The power of attorney came first. My attorney placed it on the table, page tabs visible. He read the scope aloud. Authority over property, authority over accounts, authority without notice. Dates followed, matched to signatures. The clerk marked each exhibit without comment. Next came the transactions, listings, escrow notices, transfers. The amounts spoke for themselves. My name appeared on every page, except where decisions were made. The judge looked down, then up, then back down again. Sarah's lawyer stood. All actions were lawful, he said. My client acted under valid authorization. Ms. Carter agreed. The word agreed hung there. No one reacted. My attorney didn't interrupt. He waited until the judge nodded. The medical records came last. They were heavier than the rest. The timestamp sat highlighted. Diagnosis, temporary incapacity. The hour matched the notarization exactly. Then came the timeline my attorney had assembled. Emails arranging inspections weeks before my admission. Drafts of listing agreements, a closing calendar built in advance. The judge leaned forward. So the authorization was executed, she said, at the same time the principal was documented as incapacitated? Yes, my attorney said. And the transactions were prepared before that date. Sarah's lawyer objected. The judge overruled and asked for the documents again. Pages turned slowly. The room stayed still. Sarah's lawyer tried another angle. Even if there was illness, he said, the actions benefited the principal. The judge didn't look up. Benefit is not consent, she said. Sarah shifted in her seat for the first time. Her lawyer leaned in to whisper. She nodded once, eyes forward. The judge asked Sarah directly, "Did you disclose your personal financial interests tied to these transactions?" Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it. "Did you believe this wouldn't be noticed?" the judge asked. The question landed without volume. No one smiled. No one laughed. The silence did the work. The ruling followed in measured sentences. Temporary suspension of the power of attorney. Immediate freeze on related transactions. No further transfers without court approval. The words sounded procedural, but they rearranged everything. The clerk printed the order. Paper slid across the desk. A bailiff stepped forward. Sarah stood, then stopped. Her lawyer took the document, scanned it, and said nothing. My attorney touched my elbow and handed me a copy. The ink was still warm. Relief didn't arrive. What came instead was stillness. Outside the courtroom, phones came back to life. Messages stacked. The bank acknowledged the order. The realtor's office confirmed receipt. A lender emailed asking for clarification. Sarah's lawyer requested a meeting that afternoon. Sarah didn't look over. She gathered her bag with care the way she always had. The door opened. The hallway waited. The clerk called the next case. A court employee approached and asked for my signature acknowledging service. I signed. The pen worked this time. The order went into a folder with a label already printed. Sarah stood near the exit, reading the pages again. Her lawyer spoke in a low voice. She nodded once, then again, like someone recalculating. The bailiff held the door. The hinges moved. The sound carried. My attorney leaned in. "This is temporary," he said, "but it changes the board." The door closed behind Sarah. The click was small and final enough for the moment. The clerk gestured for us to clear the aisle. Papers were stacked. Another name was called. I folded the order once and placed it in my bag. The hallway traffic resumed. Someone brushed past, already late for something else. The phone buzzed with a notification from the bank confirming restored visibility pending further review. The exit sign glowed ahead. My attorney started listing next steps, but the words came in fragments. The paper stayed solid in my hand as we moved toward the doors, the decision already in effect and still unfolding as the courtroom filled again. Chapter 8. No More Access. The first confirmation came by email. Subject lines stacked one after another, each colder than the last. Transaction canceled. Account unfrozen pending review. Listing withdrawn. Nothing dramatic, just systems correcting themselves after being forced to stop. The investigation moved quietly. My attorney forwarded notices from agencies that didn't use emotional language. Abuse of fiduciary authority. Improper self-dealing. Requests for records. Sarah's name appeared without explanation marks or adjectives. No one softened it for family context. The process didn't care that we shared parents. Family learned in fragments. There was no announcement, just calls that didn't come back, texts that stopped mid-sentence. The story changed tone once documents circulated. No one defended her out loud anymore. Silence replaced the earlier certainty. Mom called once. "I didn't know," she said. "I know," I replied. That was the entire conversation. No apologies traded, no forgiveness requested. Distance settled into place without ceremony. I didn't pursue everything available. The attorney explained options, civil damages, extended discovery, public filings. Each came with cost and reach. Some paths would have dragged people who didn't sign anything into the open. Those stayed untouched. Not mercy, just boundaries. Control returned in stages. Account access restored. Titles reverted. New passwords set. Old authorizations revoked, one by one. Each confirmation required another signature, another verification step. This time, nothing moved without my consent. A new phone number went live. Emergency contacts updated. The old one stayed active long enough to catch the last notifications before being silenced. The quiet afterward felt earned. The folder on my laptop grew heavy. Every email, every filing, every notice, saved and labeled. The name came easily. Family Event, Austin. It sat between work projects without drawing attention. The humor landed only because it didn't ask anyone else to laugh. The apartment filled slowly. Furniture returned. Utilities stabilized. Rent cleared. The landlord sent a short acknowledgement and nothing more. Work resumed its rhythm without comment. The crisis ended the way most administrative disasters do, with systems returning to baseline and pretending they had always been there. Sarah didn't reach out. Her attorney did, once, to confirm receipt of another notice. The message stayed professional, no personal notes attached. That felt appropriate. Keys arrived in a padded envelope. The old house keys, the ones she had used to meet inspectors, contractors, buyers. Metal felt heavier than expected when they dropped into my palm. That night, the keys went on the table by the door. The apartment lights stayed on. No ceremony followed. Shoes kicked off, bags set down. The space belonged to me again, without explanation. I checked the locks, out of habit more than fear. Each turn clicked cleanly. No resistance, no surprises. The door closed behind me and stayed that way. On the table, the keys didn't move. They didn't need to. Everything they once opened was already accounted for elsewhere, under my name, under rules that required permission. The phone buzzed once, a bank notification confirming final access restoration. Another confirming updated beneficiary records. I cleared them without reading further. The folders stayed open on the screen. Family event, Austin. Files sorted, dates aligned, nothing left unresolved enough to keep revisiting. From the couch, the keys stayed in view, a reminder without instruction. There was no need to return them, no place they belonged anymore. They stayed where they were. Outside, traffic passed like it always had. Inside, the door held. The lights stayed on. I locked the screen, reached for the switch, and turned it off, leaving the keys exactly where they rested while the room settled into its own order again.